The most dangerous prison you will ever live in is the one built by your own self-doubt. You've been taught to be realistic, to stay within the limits the world set for you. But that realism is a cage. In this video, we're going to break it open. And I'm going to show you how an almost irrational level of self-belief can make you unstoppable, even if the facts say otherwise. This is the mindset that turns nobodies into legends, and those legends into rulers. You're about to learn how to bend reality to your will, and why the people who tell you to be realistic secretly hope you never figure this out. In every interaction, in every negotiation, in every power struggle, there exists a simple law that most people fail to grasp. Reality is irrelevant without the agreement of others. People do not follow truth. They follow what they perceive as truth. They are moved not by objective facts, by the strength of the story told to them and the conviction with which it is lived. The man who understands this can walk into a room with nothing in his hand, no credentials, no history of achievement, and still command more respect than a man who has labored for decades, but lacks the ability to project certainty. This is the essence of delusional self-belief. Not a reckless ignorance of reality, but a deliberate crafting of it through perception. The masses rarely test the claims they hear. They assume the man who moves with authority must have the right to do so. They assume the man who speaks without hesitation must be sure of what he says. They assume the man who acts without apology must have earned that right, and because they assume, they comply. The truth, what is really behind the curtain, fades into irrelevance the moment you project a reality so confidently that others stop questioning it. Think about the rulers of history who seized power without bloodlines, wealth, or armies to begin with. They had one weapon in their hands before all others, the image of themselves as inevitable leaders. They played the role before the crown ever touched their head. Their presence was their weapon, their unshakable self-belief their armor. By refusing to betray doubt through their posture, tone, or words, they convinced others to accept their authority before they truly possessed it. And once perception took root, reality followed. Most people live inverted to this principle. They believe they must wait for evidence before they act confident. They think they must earn the right to project power. They look at their current state, their finances, their skills, their appearance, and let those temporary conditions dictate how much confidence they are allowed to have. This is why they remain invisible. They chain themselves to the slow march of reality instead of leaping ahead of it and forcing reality to catch up. The dangerous man is the one who decides that perception is the battlefield and he will dominate it, regardless of his starting point. When he walks into a negotiation, he does not wonder whether the other side respects him. He assumes they already do, and his every movement reinforces that assumption. When he speaks, he does not litter his words with qualifiers or apologies. He delivers his message as though it is the only truth worth considering. When he enters a competitive field, he does not ask himself if he belongs there. He acts as though he owns it. The secret is that most people are looking for someone to follow. They are tired of uncertainty. They crave the security of being near someone who seems to know exactly where they are going. This craving overrides their demand for proof. If you supply the appearance of absolute certainty, they will supply the trust, the resources, and the obedience that turn that appearance into reality. It is the same principle that makes a poorly armed army flee from a smaller but more aggressive force. Confidence is a contagion. Once the perception spreads that you are in control, your opponent's belief in their own power begins to fracture. They start to hesitate, and in hesitation they lose. You, on the other hand, gain momentum. Each victory, no matter how small, reinforces the image you project, and the gap between perception and reality begins to close. Eventually, they become the same thing. You must understand that this is not about lying recklessly. Lies collapse when they are thin and unsupported. This is about building an iron frame of belief that you inhabit so fully that others cannot tell where the belief ends and the truth begins. Every action, every word, every look you give must feed the same perception that you are already the figure they should defer to, align with, or fear. People are not constantly scanning reality for accuracy. They are scanning faces and voices for signs of certainty. Give them that, and they will give you everything else. The most lethal mistake is to assume that the truth will speak for itself. It won't. The truth is often ignored, dismissed, or buried if it does not serve the emotional needs of those hearing it. Perception, on the other hand, is tailored to fit those needs. And when you align your self-belief with the perception you wish to create, you rewrite the rules of engagement. You no longer wait for recognition, you command it. You no longer ask for opportunities, you dictate them. You no longer bend to reality, you shape it in your image. There is a magnetic force that exists in human interaction, one that pulls people toward those who seem sure of themselves, even when that certainty appears unreasonable. In any group, whether it is a small meeting, a marketplace, or a battlefield, there is an unspoken search for a figure who seems to know exactly what they are doing. That figure becomes the reference point for everyone else's behavior. This is the power of certainty, and it often outweighs skill, experience, and even truth when you are certain. Not occasionally, not only when things are going well, but consistently. People adjust themselves around you. They defer decisions. They seek your guidance. They grant you authority without a formal vote or explicit agreement. It is not because they have analyzed your credentials and concluded you are the most capable. It is because they are instinctively drawn to the stability that certainty provides. Humans are creatures of survival, and certainty signals safety. It signals direction. It signals a leader who can be trusted to act decisively when others freeze. Most individuals lack this kind of presence because their belief in themselves is conditional. They are confident only when the situation is favorable and only when evidence supports them. The rare few cultivate a certainty that does not depend on favorable conditions. They treat doubt as an enemy to be crushed. Before it escapes their mind, they decide, and once decided, they do not look back. This is why they rise faster, influence more deeply, and maintain control even in chaotic circumstances. The mind naturally seeks leaders in moments of uncertainty. In a crowd of hesitant voices, the one voice that cuts through with clarity will command the most attention. And here lies the subtle advantage. That clarity does not have to come from superior knowledge. It can be generated purely from conviction. You can enter a room filled with more experienced men, yet if you speak and act as though your direction is the only one worth following, you will find that many of them will, without realizing it, begin to orient themselves around you. This is not mere arrogance. Arrogance pushes people away, certainty draws them in. The difference is in execution. Certainty is not loud for the sake of volume. It is steady, unwavering, and deliberate. It is the calm in the storm that makes others believe you have already navigated such storms before. Even if you are navigating one for the first time, your composure will make them believe otherwise. Consider the leaders who have emerged in times of crisis throughout history. Often, they were not the most qualified in technical terms. They were, however, the ones who exuded the least hesitation. They gave orders as if those orders were already destined to succeed. Their manner left little room for debate, not because they silenced others by force, but because their absolute conviction made opposition feel like folly. People trusted them, because they seemed to trust themselves beyond question. Certainty also has a subtle effect on adversaries. A rival expecting to face a nervous opponent is unsettled when they meet a figure who radiates the confidence of victory before the first move is made. It forces them to question their own preparation, to second-guess their strategy, and to react rather than lead. Once they are reacting, they have already surrendered a portion of control. The man who commands through certainty does not simply win followers, he dictates the tempo of the entire environment. His confidence becomes the rhythm everyone else moves to, whether they are allies or opponents. This is a hidden form of dominance because while others are adjusting their steps to match yours, you are free to lead the dance entirely on your own terms. The dangerous beauty of this power is that it does not require truth to function. You do not need to have the perfect plan in place from the start. You simply need to project that you do. Execution can be refined along the way, but if you wait until every flaw is resolved before you project certainty, you will never project it at all. The opportunity will pass to someone else who dares to act first. Certainty creates a feedback loop. Your unshakable demeanor inspires others to follow you. Their following reinforces your belief in yourself, which further amplifies your certainty. Soon, what began as a posture becomes reality. The line between what is true and what is perceived blurs, and people treat the perception as the only truth that matters. This is why those who understand this principle never allow doubt to leak into their presence. They may experience fear privately, but in public, they are an unmovable pillar. They understand that control is not given. It is seized through the willingness to appear completely sure when others are desperate for direction. And once you hold that position, you do not simply participate in events. You decide their course. Reality, for most people, is something fixed, a solid wall they believe they cannot push through. They take it as it is presented to them, adapt to it, and live within its boundaries. But for a rare few, reality is not a fixed wall. It is clay, soft and pliable in their hands, shaped not by what exists in the present moment, but by the conviction of what they decide will exist. This shaping begins not in the physical world, but in the mind, both their own and the minds of those around them. When you hold an unshakable, even irrational level of belief in your own vision, that belief becomes a force others cannot easily ignore. People respond not only to what they see, but to what they are told they are seeing. If you speak and act as though your vision is inevitable, they begin to filter reality through the lens you provide. This is how the mind works. It prefers a coherent story, even if that story is not yet supported by present evidence. Once you present yourself as the central figure in that story, others will unconsciously adjust their actions to fit it. This is why delusional self-belief, when wielded with discipline, becomes a weapon of transformation. It allows you to step beyond the limitations of the current moment. Instead of saying, "I will try to become this," you operate as if you already are. Instead of waiting for the world to recognize your potential, you act in ways that demand recognition now. This repeated display of certainty does something powerful. It rewires not just your own behavior, but the expectations others have of you. They begin to see you not for what you currently are, but for the role you've convinced them you already play. Consider how reputations are built. In the beginning, there is rarely enough tangible proof to justify the status someone claims. Yet through consistent projection, in tone, posture, decisions, and results, that status becomes accepted. The audience, once skeptical, begins to speak about the individual in ways that reinforce the very identity he declared from the start. This is the bending of reality, transforming a self-created image into a shared belief that takes on a life of its own. Those who cannot do this remain trapped. They think reality is an external authority that must be obeyed, rather than a field of influence they can manipulate. They look at their limitations and call them permanent. They look at their resources and assume that those resources dictate what is possible. The one who believes beyond the limits, who believes with the kind of conviction others find almost unreasonable, finds ways to use even small resources to create outsized impact. The belief itself fuels action, the action fuels results. The results fuel the belief in a cycle that pulls reality toward the original vision. There is a reason people fall in line behind someone who speaks as if the outcome is already decided. Certainty simplifies their mental load. Instead of wrestling with uncertainty, they adopt your frame of reality. And once they adopt it, they begin to act in ways that make it more likely to come true. The process is subtle, but undeniable. You plant the image, they carry it forward through their behavior, and the environment gradually transforms to reflect the image you started with. Even opponents can be bent in this way. A rival who is confronted by a man who behaves as though victory is not only certain, but already in progress, begins to feel the weight of inevitability. Doubt enters their mind, and doubt is the seed of defeat. Every hesitation they experience gives you more room to maneuver, more influence to exert, more control over the flow of events. The danger lies only for those who wield this without understanding its demands. You cannot declare a reality once and then abandon it when challenged. Bending reality requires relentless consistency. If you claim to be a leader, you must behave as one every moment you are seen. If you claim victory is certain, every action you take must align with that claim. The moment your behavior contradicts your declared reality, you give others permission to challenge it, and once they sense a crack, they will exploit it. The men who master this never let the image they project falter. Even in private moments of doubt, they act publicly with the same decisive authority, as if the outcome is already sealed. They understand that human beings, by nature, seek confirmation of what they already believe. If you make them believe in your inevitability, they will look for every sign to confirm it. And as they do, they will unconsciously help you create the very reality you declared from the beginning. And the greatest difference between those who rise to command and those who remain subjects lies in how they handle doubt. Not only the doubt of others. Most people treat doubt as a warning signal, something that must be resolved before taking action. They wait for the perfect plan, the perfect moment, or the perfect level of preparation before they move. By the time that moment arrives, if it ever does, the opportunity has already been seized by someone else. The man who dominates doubt understands that hesitation is the silent assassin of ambition. He does not eliminate doubt by gathering endless reassurance. He eliminates it by acting in spite of it, crushing it under the weight of decisive movement. The truth is that doubt is inevitable. It will appear before every significant step you take. It will whisper reasons to retreat, to delay, to question your ability. Those who fail are the ones who listen. Those who win are the ones who treat that voice not as a signal to stop, as proof they are standing at the threshold of growth and power. The presence of doubt means the stakes are high, and high stakes are where the greatest rewards are found. Dominance over doubt begins with a simple, but rare mental discipline, refusing to feed it. When most people encounter uncertainty, they examine it, turn it over in their mind, discuss it with others, and let it expand until it paralyzes them. The man who commands his own mind does the opposite. He starves doubt by denying it space to grow. He replaces questions with declarations. He speaks of what will happen, not what might. He refuses to give voice to fears in public, understanding that to reveal them is to invite others to share and amplify them. This inner discipline radiates outward. In any group, the man who shows no visible hesitation becomes the default authority. Others may have more knowledge or skill, but if they display even a moment of uncertainty, they lose ground to the one who remains unshaken. Confidence, whether genuine or constructed, becomes a shield that others instinctively gather behind. In this way, dominance over doubt does not only strengthen your own position, it weakens the position of everyone around you who cannot match your composure. The psychological effect is powerful. When you move without hesitation, those watching you begin to doubt themselves instead. They wonder why they feel uncertainty when you seem to have none. This reversal is crucial, because once their doubt grows, they are no longer competing with you from a position of strength. They are reacting, adjusting, second-guessing, and seeking your lead. You have transferred the burden of uncertainty from yourself to them, and in doing so, you gain a decisive advantage. History is filled with figures who appeared unstoppable not because they were infallible, but because they refused to display weakness in the moments that mattered most. Even when they faced overwhelming odds, they acted as though victory was inevitable. This attitude unsettled their enemies and inspired their allies, creating a psychological momentum that often outweighed the physical or strategic realities of the situation. To dominate doubt, you must also master the art of narrative, both the one you tell yourself and the one you present to others. Internally, you frame every challenge as already overcome, every obstacle as temporary, every setback as irrelevant in the face of the larger outcome. Externally, you project that same narrative with your body language, your speech, and your decisions. The man who believes he is destined to win and carries himself accordingly forces others to begin seeing him in that light, even before tangible proof appears. This dominance is not reckless optimism. It is calculated control over the emotional currents that dictate human behavior. You know that the moment you allow your own doubt to surface, you give permission for the doubt of others to rise as well. And once doubt spreads, corrodes morale, slows action, and invites hesitation at the exact moment you need movement. By holding the line internally, you hold it externally, becoming the anchor in any storm. When faced with moments where the average man would pause and question himself, the one who has mastered this principle does the opposite. He accelerates. This forward motion creates an impression of inevitability, as though he is already too far ahead for anyone to stop him. The illusion becomes reality because others, sensing his momentum, begin to either join him or step aside. Few will risk opposing someone who appears immune to fear and hesitation because opposition feels futile before it even begins. Doubt, left unchecked, will always destroy more ambitions than failure ever could. To dominate it is to ensure that you move when others stand still, to claim ground before they decide if it is worth claiming, and to maintain control of yourself. When the majority surrender control to fear, that the world does not belong to the cautious or the modest. It belongs to those willing to see themselves as more than their present reality and act as though that vision is already true. Delusional self-belief is not madness. It is the deliberate rejection of limitations that others accept without question. When you understand that perception outweighs truth, you learn to command the way others see you before they have reason to. When you grasp that certainty itself is a form of control, you stop waiting for evidence and begin shaping the environment with your presence alone. When you realize that reality can be bent, you cease being a passive participant and become the architect of outcomes. And when you dominate doubt, you remove the final barrier that keeps most men chained to mediocrity. This is the quiet law that governs power. People will accept the reality you give them if you believe it without hesitation. The more you act as though your position is inevitable, the more inevitable it becomes. Those who dare to live in this state of unwavering conviction rewrite the rules of the game. And they rarely lose, because long before they win in the physical world, they have already won in the minds of everyone around them.